I feel like we always need to do the same banter, just like you would do before the
That's right.
NPR
That's
segments.
right.
It's the little secret part before the secret part.
That's
All
right. We
right,
got our pre-show that only the YouTube
good.
people out there now get to
Yep,
hear. Hi, YouTube.
the only YouTube people get this part of the show. All right, you two people, are you all ready to start? Let's do it. Hello and welcome to Python Bytes, where we deliver Python news and headlines directly to your earbuds. This is episode 485, recorded on Tuesday, June 23rd. I'm Calvin Hendricks Parker.
And I'm Michael Kennedy.
Thanks, Michael, for being here with me today. I'm excited to be your co-host for Python Bytes. We've got a lot going on. We're going to dive right in, but first, make sure you go check out our sponsors. It is sponsored by us in our work. Michael's great work over at the Talk Python courses, so check out Talk Python's coursework over there. And if you are in the Midwest tomorrow, since those go live today, AWS Community Day Midwest is tomorrow, June 24th in downtown Indianapolis. 6 Feet Up is sponsoring, and there'll be two Sixies presenting. So you've got that's actually what 6 Feet Up people refer to themselves as. So if you want to come check out two of us presenting at the conference tomorrow, check that out. If you want to connect with the hosts, you can find Michael and myself at all the various social spots on Mastodon, Blue Sky. Do you still use X?
I do still use X, and I updated our show notes template so that we have our X links and LinkedIn even. How about
Perfect. Yeah. Because I'm probably a little more active on LinkedIn, but maybe this is a nudge or a motivation that I should go be active over on the other platforms too. And you can check out the show on Mastodon and Blue Sky at those various links, and X there as well. So join us on YouTube for the live version of the show at pythonbytes.fm/live to be part of the audience. Usually we record Tuesday at 7 a.m. Pacific, 10 a.m. Eastern for those of us on the East Coast. I guess we cover both the coasts, Michael. And then older video versions are available there as well. Finally, if you want a bonus digest of every week's show notes in email form, just add your name and email to our Friends of the Show list, and we'll never share that email address with anyone else. You'll just get great sets of links and show notes from the team over here at Python Bytes. All right, Michael, let's kick it off. You've got the first topic up here.
And let me tell you, I think this one is going to resonate with you.
I already saw when I peeked at some of the headlines. So I was like, this looks
Yes. Backing up Docker volumes. So maybe we should do a quick, what the heck? What are Docker volumes? So if you do Docker a lot, you know exactly what Docker volumes are, but Docker's a little bit one of those things like, oh, it seems so complicated, so weird, and it's just really different than what I'm used to doing. And then you work and like, oh, that's kind of like Linux, but just in a file. You know what I mean? But one of the things that is different about Docker is it's very transient. It's not quite Nix in that it can't be changed once it's fired up, but it's generally ephemeral, right? I start up a Docker container. My app or whatever app is running there might write to it, but that's writing inside the Docker container. And then when it goes away, if I restart it, rebuild it especially, then whatever it wrote is just gone. Sometimes you want that. But say if you want your web server logs to stick around, you don't want it. If you want your database data to stick around, you really don't want it. So there's a lot of times that you want a permanent storage, but an ephemeral operating system and code and so on for Docker. And so what you can create is a Docker volume, which is a managed persistent virtual hard drive type thing associated with that particular Docker container. And you can move around theoretically afterwards, right? But typically you say, okay, my Docker setup, this database server gets a volume for its data, something like that.
Yeah, and it's one of my favorite features of Docker is the immutability of the containers. And if people respect that, things go a lot smoother generally.
Yes, exactly. Like, well, what I typically do, Calvin, when my Docker doesn't work, I just log into the container and then I pull the new version and just no, just kidding.
This is the modern equivalent of change mod 777 across all your files.
Exactly. It's not working. That always fixes it.
Just fix it.
I've just opened all the ports. It says it can't get to it.
What's the problem?
These passwords. Yeah, exactly. So,
okay. What do you do with those volumes, Michael?
So you got to back that data up. I mean, unless you just don't like yourself. You got to back up your data because if something goes wrong, from a whole host of reasons, things could go wrong. You need a backup of your data. That's just living in servers, right? Or
Yeah.
just computers. So a lot of times what you can do is you can run some kind of command like I use MongoDB. A lot of these people, I also use Postgres. For either of those, there's a command you can run that says backup this and like back it up to the host or somewhere like that and then send it off to a encrypted storage or something. But if it's just the hard drive, the volume you want to back up specifically, that's way more challenging. So Brian Weber, thanks Brian, sent over this idea called this Rust utility called Docker Volume Backup. And the idea is you can back up Docker volumes to in the all the ways I can imagine I would possibly want to back them up. So you can back them up locally. You can back them up to an S3 bucket. And when you say S3, that means not just AWS that you could learn about tomorrow, but many of the cloud providers have adopted some kind of S3 compatible API, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you could back it up to, I don't know, DigitalOcean or something if you want as well. WebDAV, Azure Blob Storage, which you probably could just treat as S3, but directly. Dropbox, Google Drive, some SSH compatible storage, I'm guessing SCP or something like that. All those things. And how sweet is that? So the idea is when you've got a Docker Compose type of setup, you can go and add a separate service, right, in your Compose. And it just says the image is this project, this Docker volume backup. And you give it environment files, and then it can just back up to somewhere.
Really, really, if it's easy to do, you will do it.
Yes, it's nice, right? So you basically just add it as a separate service.
Yeah.
And then in your ENV, you give it a schedule and a destination. You know, the ENV settings, right? The backup settings. You just give it those kinds of things.
And if you've got a home lab and you've got a NAS on there, most NASs have S3 compatible storage, so you can keep it all. I'm kind of touting the local first operation again, keeping all your data your data.
Yeah, absolutely. So this thing is super small, written in Go, 25 megs. So there was also a Docker volume backup, Docker shell-based image, and this is 1/20th the size, so that's cool. Let's see. You can set up a cron job in your Compose setup, or you can just CLI run it. This is part of the stuff that I thought was really cool. It rotates away your old backups, so you don't have to worry about that kind of stuff. You say, like, just give me a backup every day for a month, you know, or something like that, and then you move it on. Local GPT encryption, like at rest encryption of your backups, which I think is super important. Because the last thing you want to do is like, well, I want to make sure I back it up so it doesn't, if things get hacked, it doesn't go wrong, and then that actually being the thing that gets stolen. You get notification on finished infill filled runs. You can have it stop the container before it does the snapshot and start it back up. So if you're doing like, I don't know, a SQLite sort of thing as your storage and you don't need that much uptime, you want to make sure it's not in some like half committed journaling state or whatever, you know. You can run custom commands during the backup lifecycle.
That was my next question. Can you run a custom command?
And there's the one that maybe start going down this list. It has Docker Swarm support plus ARM64 and ARM v7, which means it runs on Raspberry Pi Home Labs.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, so if you want to even back up your home labs, yeah, it's pretty comprehensive, right? And this also gives me a chance to shout out Python Bytes search. So people can come over and search for like Docker backup. And Brian pointed out like, if you search for volume until today, it came back with no results. And he thought it was broken, but actually he said, it's so fast, I thought it didn't work. It felt kind of like a rough thing. But I actually put a ton of energy into this custom search engine that I built for this. Nice. So if you're interested, we've covered some of them. Please check out our search engine. And you can even add it. Now, this is like next level right here. You can add it as a custom search engine to your browser. So you can just say PB space and search our site.
So
which is awesome.
Python Bytes all the things. Actually, I was
That's
looking
right.
for that this morning because I was like, did we cover this? Have we talked about this in the past? So
Yeah.
that's super cool. No, that's awesome that they went and looked at your site to see if this thing existed and didn't find it and scratched that itch and made that thing happen. So very
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of making things
But
happen,
before we move on, I just want to
oh
give a
yeah,
shout out to Chris out there. Says,
mm,
backing up a volume is surprisingly hard when you think about application state, stateful data, restore points. Yes. So absolutely. And this is a really nice
yeah,
option here.
yeah,
Yeah.
that is very true. Like I said, if you make a thing easy to do, it will get done. If it is hard to do, it will go into that queue of things still to do. All right. Well, thanks for that tip on backing up my Docker volumes into S3 compatible storage. But the next one up here actually is kind of exciting because it's not just a release of Pyodide 314, which you'll notice a new numbering scheme there going on. The real news here is actually the fact that PEP 783 has made this possible. The Pyodide maintainers were basically hand building 300 plus packages for your browser to use Python in the browser. So this is all about using Python in the browser. If you've ever thought about why do I have to use JavaScript to make fun web apps, you can actually use Python to do that with tools like Pyodide. And now that the 783 has actually been accepted, you can use CI build wheel and put wheels, like compiled binary packages, onto PyPy so that if you write an app for the browser, someone can quickly download and get the latest versions of the dependencies you may be including in that application itself. So again, I don't know, they may be seeing hopefully a surge of browser-based Pyodide packages onto PyPy or PyPI coming up here in the future. But that's actually really cool to see that ease of use now. And so there's a whole tool chain available to build these packages and make them available. A couple other changes that have happened in this 314 release. You'll notice the numbering change. There's a version jump from 0.29 to 314. That's intentional. Basically, they're going to have the Pyodide version track the Python version that it closely matches with. So if you're looking for the 3.12 version of Pyodide, that's the older 0.29. But moving forward, you'll quickly spot and know which version of Python you're getting when you install and use Pyodide in your projects based on the version number of Pyodide itself. So you'll get 314 tracks to 3.14. So for binary compatibility, it's locked within the Python cycle, meaning the packages you build today won't break with the next Pyodide release. So another big benefit to this piece here. They've also brought back in some packages that were taken out of the standard library for Pyodide to make the packaging smaller. Things like SQLite 3, SSL, and LZMA are back in the default standard library. Which is nice. So you don't have to basically install something like SQLite if you're using that in your browser-based application. There's some bug fixes and other things in there. There's also experimental TCP socket support in Node.js, and you can now connect Pyodide to a real database. So that's kind of if you've got Python running in the browser, but you can't connect to a database or to sockets, you were kind of limited in what you could do with like local storage, for example. But now that opens up a wider spectrum of things you can do. Looks like they've tested it on MySQL, Postgres, and Redis when running on server side. So it definitely blurs the lines between Python in the browser and Python runtime anywhere WASM runs, which I think is, again, super cool. So I don't know, what do you think? Are you
Wow.
building some web-based Python apps, Michael?
I would love a Vue.js like equivalent or something along those lines built on top of PyScript, which can run Pyodide, or even MicroPython, which I think would be super neat. I built some examples actually when I built a PWA based on PyScript when it first came out, and that was based on
Mm-hmm.
Pyodide. And it worked really, really well. But I've not been doing it lately. You guys see a lot more variations with all your projects that you work on. How about you?
I mean, we've got some interesting stuff going on in the appliance world, but this might actually open the door to, again, more of those at-edge applications where connectivity may be limited to. I just see a lot of special use cases that open up when you can run Python in the browser. I've always wanted Python
Yeah.
in the browser, and when PyScript came out, what was that back? Oh, it's been a few years back now. That was exciting and kind of big news, but obviously it was slow, and in the early days, there was limitations. But I think this is a big move that's going to open up a lot of options for folks to build either embedded applications or things that can kind of stand on their own and run at the edge. So I'm excited. I think it's going to offer a lot of interesting moves there.
Yeah, I'm
Great.
very excited about WASM. I think it's going to be. I think it's
Yeah,
going to be cool.
I think it's going to be super cool. Now, let's continue on. You've been talking a lot about tools lately. You've got another one here.
I never stop. We don't stop talking about the tools. So I want
Don't
to talk
stop,
about
won't stop.
the exactly. I want to talk about the NB CLI. So this is a command line interface for automation people, but the primary reason for building it is AI agents and notebooks. Specifically, the NB obviously is for notebooks. So this is a Jupyter AI contrib project. And I'm sure you've noticed this, Calvin, but so many projects now have some form of CLI as kind of the final integration point, or the ultimate integration
Should be
point.
the ultimate integration point.
Yeah. I mean, the motivation allows like, well, our agents can't get to our data and it doesn't know the authenticated API. It's too complicated. So what can we just do to make it simple? But it opens up so much more, right? To just have a CLI for whatever you're working on. And
Yeah.
so here's one for Jupyter Notebooks. And if you do Marimo, like hang tight, I got something there as well. But the idea here is that instead of having the agents try to parse the IPYNB files, which are just gnarly JSON, especially if like lots of output is in there, it's like there's your actual code and your cell definitions, but then there's maybe 10,000 lines of output to the next cell. That's not a great place for agents to be working, right? They're
Context windows are a precious space.
Exactly, and you're messing with that, and also it's hard for it to actually kind of see the ambient variables and stuff like that are in the kernel. So the idea here is with this CLI, you get more direct access to those types of things. So let me go over here. First of all, experimental. So heads up, it is Rust based, so it's likely to get VC funding. That's super good. But the idea is that it can read, write, execute, and search Jupyter Notebooks and just skip that whole thing. It doesn't necessarily need to parse the IPYNB files, and it even works without a Jupyter server. So it can just talk directly. So it works with the files directly, and it talks to the kernels using 0MQ, which is super cool. And instead of using a token-heavy JSON or just Markdown, it uses @cell and @output sentinels with inline metadata. So, as smart. You said, less wasted context, and you compose these things. And it even ships with an agent skill. This is another thing I'm starting to see a lot of and have been working on. I should have prepared an announcement on this that I'm not ready to talk about, but I got some stuff over. Some skills. I got skills. So if you want to install this, you can just npx skills install Jupyter-AI-contrib-nb-CLI to install it with Claude Code.
Yeah, I think that's smart because
yeah.
MCP is not the answer to everything. I think there's a lot of value in skills and CLI combined together because again, preserving that context window in a tool like this opens up a lot for folks who are doing like data science. And they don't know how to write or want to write an MCP, but they're definitely all in on AI and agentic and LLMs.
Yeah. And MCPs basically say, hey, AI, here are some tools you can use, but they don't set the context of here's why you need to use the tools. Here's the ways in which they work together. Like you need an agent or a skill.
Yeah.
You need a skill to kind of set the stage, even if it's an MCP, like, hey, you can use all this stuff from the MCP, by the way. Makes me think I should improve my skills. Okay, so I said I got skills, but we'll see. There's an article about it by Piyush Jain, so you can check that out. And if you're a Marimo person, I am going to have Trevor on from the Marimo team to talk about Marimo Pair, which is a similar, not the same idea, but a pretty similar idea of basically how do you get the agents inside the kernel instead of just having them work with the files and so on. So look forward to that. Over to you.
I like that. I like that.
Yeah.
The Marimo pair aspect. I've become a Marimo, like I mentioned in the last episode, a Marimo fan.
Okay.
So pairing well with something like the last tool you just mentioned is that a lot of agents and a lot of these agentic workflows are lacking the ability to recall memory in an efficient way. So this next piece here is actually a tool you can add into your agentic workflow to do AI memory. So, and more than just memory, memory that learns. So, thinking about this memory problem is actually kind of hard. AIs forget everything between sessions, obviously. So, you're constantly writing project specs, implementation detail plans. Those are good practices. But wouldn't it be nice if it could remember, like, last Tuesday when you use this tool, this kind of output happened, and maybe in this context, it's actually better to use this other tool. But that kind of that temporal, like using time and associating facts and details together, isn't something that just a markdown memory.md file is going to help you out with. So there's an open source tool called Hindsight from the folks at Vectorize. And they offer a cloud version of this, but you can run it locally. You can install it with Python. It's got, I think, adapters for all the major, like Python, JavaScript, Node, etc. But basically, what they're saying is, simple vector search is not enough. Even if you had a ChromaDB locally with your documents all loaded into it, that isn't enough to solve the problem about what did you do last spring, for example, like the example they give here, that requires temporal reasoning and not just semantic similarity. So Hindsight attempts to add in this extra layer of temporal retrieval, which runs semantic, keyword, graph, and temporal search in parallel to store, retrieve, and reason over those memories. So you actually get kind of three main functions. It's a simple API. There's just retain, recall, and reflect. And then it uses this temper technique to do the search across them all in parallel, and then it brings it all together, and it automatically consolidates the related facts into durable observations instead of piling up duplicates. So again, preserving that context window, putting in what is most valuable when it means the most to what you're doing, is probably the next step in memory. I think this is a next front that has to be conquered, is giving these agents better recall and memory. I think a lot of people got a little taste of this with OpenClaw, but OpenClaw's default memory, I don't think, gives you this level out of the box. But you could integrate this into your existing OpenClaws. It is on GitHub. It's open source. You can pip install Hindsight All, and that actually brings down and installs the whole server in process. It includes like a
Wow.
LangChain, Llama Index, Pydantic AI, and Crew AI, and more, all kind of bundled together into a nice package that you can just start using with your Claude Code or Cursor or whatever agent you want. You can now give it better memory that can actually learn from what you're doing along the way. So I don't know have you run into memory issues,
Oh
Michael,
yes.
especially as
Oh,
we
oh
age.
yes. 100%. I have my command book app that I mentioned last week
Oh yeah, yeah.
is
You're all about this.
it doesn't work as well as Python in terms of agentic stuff, but obviously you can do stuff like that. But just to give you an example, I had to add a feature to the CLI. I've been doing a lot of search work to the CLI for the command book GUI app, which is weird, but will make sense next time I talk about it. But the way that those things are built is the Xcode project has them linked in the project, and you don't have to build them separately. But the agent, even though it's worked on it a ton of times, is like, oh, I got to figure out how to build the
Right.
CLI. I can't find it. Like, there doesn't seem to be a CLI project. What is going on? And it spent like 5 minutes on this. And what are you doing? Like, save a memory that you just build the project this way. And he goes, oh yes, that would be great for next time, right?
Right.
And
It's like having a fresh intern every hour you start a new thing.
every day they show up, they're like, hey, I'm here for my
Hey,
first day of work. Like, no, you're not. What are you doing? You've been here for weeks. And so I think that
they
would
don't
be
know that.
great. One of the things that I think would be cool would be, and I don't know if you could do this, is have it sync across computers, because I work on my MacBook and I work on my Mini. And I'm like, I told it to stave on my Mini. But why is that not somehow part of your account rather
Yeah.
than part of your, like, on my account, it knows that this project is like this, right?
Yeah.
So this must have files, right? Maybe you could save them
Well,
to
So
your
it has
Dropbox or
both.
something.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking that after our tools episode from last week, I'm really focusing on building out my framework desktop machine to be that central place I go. I
Mhm.
mentioned Tmux last week as my favorite go-to tool for basically using Mosh and logging into that machine. But I think I'm going to switch over to Zellage. If you've tried Zellij, I don't know how you pronounce it. These are Zellij or Zellage. But having this mental model, this hindsight running over there, where no matter where I'm out and about, or if I'm at my desk or sitting on the couch, I'm always actually working off that one machine where I've got great local model
Oh, you can
availability.
talk to it over the network.
Yeah,
Oh,
talk to it over. Yeah, exactly. Well, combining that with the Tailscale, or I've
yes.
got the Ubiquity. What do you call it? Teleport here.
Yeah.
But
Okay, this is cool. I'm setting it up on my mini.
yeah. I think you put it on one spot. And so you can see here the memory bank consists of not just like a single markdown file of memories, but it's like mental models, observations, memories and entities, chunks, and documents, which is important because whole documents won't do it for you. You sometimes it needs to be able to do that reasoning and reflecting and pull those chunks into specific spots. And based on again, I think the key bit here is time. Clever name, hindsight. In hindsight, time would matter for memory. And so I think they've definitely solved this problem, which I think is pretty cool. So
Amazing.
check
All
it
right.
out. Yep, check that one out. I'm gonna install it on my framework desktop and start using this for memory inside of my projects. I think it's gonna be pretty cool. All
Yeah.
right, let's head into let's go to the extra part of the show, and I think both of us have quite a few extras here. When you want to
Yeah.
kick it
You got your
off,
screen.
Michael?
You got your screen. Okay. Yeah. So I'll kick
Oh,
it
okay,
off.
okay, I can do that. Yeah, let me
All right.
let's see here. The first one I was going to talk about. Oh gosh, I've got too many. I've got too many things on my screen now.
That's basically what this podcast is about.
How do you refer to your AI agents when you're talking to them? Do you have a term of endearment for them, Michael?
Not in a personalized way, but I refer to Claude as Claude, and I refer to
With their name,
ChatGPT
their
stuff.
branding, their
Yeah,
branding.
and I refer to ChatGPT as Chat. Like, hey, Chat, let's talk about this, or like, hey, Claude, good job
I,
on that.
I kind of like Armin's approach of calling it clanker. I think it puts it in. I
Clunker.
think a clanker. It kind of puts it in the right spot. And when I think about it, I think about this. I assume this is the Star Wars reference, because in Star Wars they called all the Trade Federation robot bots clankers as a derogatory term in their case. But I feel like it doesn't make it as human, and you can yell at a clanker a lot easier than you could if you're yelling at Claude. People might get upset about you yelling at something named Claude. So I thought clanker was kind of interesting. Check that out. There's a blog post from Armin about it from it's a couple weeks old, but I think it's still very relevant to check out. So that was my first one. And the next one is everyone has one of these in their office. Someone decided to make it more official. Do I not have the? Let me grab the link for that one. There's a project called Ponytail, and now I've got it open over
I
here.
read this article. No, I watched a video evaluating this on YouTube just
Here
last
it
night.
is. Yes. So make your AI agent think like the laziest senior dev in the room. And the best code is the code you never wrote. So instead of it's kind of the not invented here, or Yagni. Like I'm not gonna rewrite my own requests library. Make sure you always use the libraries that are available. I kind of like. I haven't tried it, but I thought it was kind of clever. Less code, less tokens, obviously, and you basically can just insert into your code, "Hey, Ponytail, browser has this," and put in there like a placeholder of like what you want. If you want to date, for example, in this case is a date picker. So it's like input type date, and then let your agent figure it out with this skill installed to figure out what dependency it should go install instead of trying to write its own. So a lot of times
Yeah,
these AI agents are going to try and write their own versions of things that probably already exist. Why
and
would you want
they're
to do that?
very happy to go
Oh
full
yeah.
enterprise on you when it's like I don't need, this is not in need of that. It is a very simple project. I just need like a dialogue. So maybe you could just use,
Yeah.
hey, guess what, HTML has recently has a built-in dialogue thing. You don't need to install React just so I can have a dialogue.
Yep.
That's kind of the vibe.
All right. The next one is we've been talking a lot about agents, AI, and giving them control over our computers. How can we do that in a safe way, and how can we do it for multi-user? A good friend of mine, Chris McDonough, from the Zope Python clone communities, he has wrote a agentic wrapper around all this. So it kind of does containerized sandbox workspaces where you can actually do it multiplayer. So check out Dave. I don't believe he's done much fanfare around this project. It's very new, just started a couple weeks back, but I think it's already made a ton of progress. There's already like well over 1,000 commits in there from him and a couple other contributors into this. But basically,
That's awesome.
use it with Pi or Claude Code, but intentionally given wide permissions. So you want to be able to have them read, write, execute code, but do it in a safe space, in its own safely isolated workspace. And then for teams, you basically, I believe it incorporates tmux in for allowing kind of the multi-user, multiplayer. If you've ever done tmux with multi-user, it's actually kind of magical. It feels like Google Docs, where your multiple people can edit simultaneously. Well, multiple people can be in the terminal simultaneously, working together. And so when you want to collaborate and want to be using an agent and actually collaborate with other humans, this actually may be a really good option for you. It is called Clang, kind of maybe a play on the word clankers again. So Clang with the K at the end. How do you pronounce that? These projects need to get better naming.
Clang. I don't know. It's, yeah. I honestly think when projects are like this and they could be pronounced many ways, there should be a little
Yeah, yeah,
MP3, just like,
right.
here's how it sounds.
How do I
Yes.
pronounce this? All right, another one. Who's been having struggles with GitHub and their outages recently? Well, Cursor has announced Origin. It's currently on a public waitlist, but it might be something worth watching. But it is basically a source control optimized for the agentic world. I think they are claiming something like over 22 commits per second support out of the box. So if you've got a lot of users going at it with their agents and being able to commit at that level of scale, I think this is the future, and where GitHub better get their act together, because it sounds like Cursor is coming for their lunch. And the last extra I wanted to cover was performative UI. Michael, have you ever wanted to launch your own AI startup, and you needed to have the right AI components onto the page?
Oh,
This is
yeah.
AI native React components for the next, you name it. So any fancy sparkles, any fancy
Ooh.
pills with status lights in them, you can just npm install performative UI.
I just added a pill to one of my websites, and I didn't even think that I could use the framework for it.
Oh yeah. Well, so there's, for example, GoldenEye, the GoldenEye effect. If you'd like to have that, you can
I
get
kind
that
of,
right on
I
here.
kind of don't want to like this, but I do kind of like it.
I know. When I saw it, I was like, oh my gosh, the things. I mean, you scroll down through here, they have thought of, well, or cribbed every possible trope that most of the AI startups are doing. If you want to have your chat bubbles look like they are coming straight out of the existing chat client, if you want to have an IDE, they've got a mock IDE component that you can land in your page to show developers that you're very developer friendly. So that was a fun one that I thought I would share with the group here. Michael, what do you got in the way of extras?
All right, I got a couple of things. By the way, before I jump over there, just you talked about Armin's article on clankers and that word. I have gone the opposite direction. And I found it surprisingly makes me feel better working with these things. Is I've gotten Claude to address me in a way more personal way.
Okay.
So instead of going, the user has requested or the project, it refers to me as Michael and like uses me. So it'll be like, and Michael already committed this. And so we're going to do this. And it's because it sounds so silly, but here's the thing, like I find some, without those kinds of things, like doing a lot of this agentic stuff, it's super sterile. Instead of like working with other people, I'm just now working with this thing that like refers to me as user. I'm like, I am not a number. I am a man. Like
I'm
that's
gonna
where
be
I sort
worried.
of like,
I'm gonna be worried, Michael, when you start referring to yourself in the third person.
I know. well, well. Michael wants to cover it. No, just kidding. So, really cool Talk Python episode that I released last week, and it will still be the live one for a day or two before I release the next one, is I interviewed Charlie Marsh. Now that Astral has been part of OpenAI for a little while.
What a journey.
Yeah, basically it talks about the whole journey he's been on. It talks about what does this acquisition by OpenAI mean for the Python community, for UV, TY, rough, all those kinds of things. So I think people, if you care about like what is happening to UV, check this out. And you mentioned Cursor. They're going to have a little extra money to build Origin because they just got acquired by SpaceX, or are going to be. It says to acquire, not has been acquired.
What do you do with that extra money other than build more stuff?
Exactly. You could run a lot of agents for
You
$60 billion because that's what they're apparently getting acquired for. $60 billion. A VS Code clone. Oh my gosh.
Wow. Wow, wow, wow.
Wow. I was a huge lover of Cursor for a long time
I've
and
never been a cursor user. It was not my normal
not
toolkit.
your vibe.
No.
It's
I'm
the fact that it moves.
CLIs.
I know, I
Terminal.
know. See, this is why it's good you're here. We have different perspectives. I love Cursor, but it's been moving more and more towards just fire off a bunch of agents that don't even look at what it does. Sort of that's been what it's embracing, and the more it does that, the less I kind of want to still see what's going on a little bit. Anyway, also Astral intersect OpenAI, but this is not the same thing. Charlie Marsh posted, I'm proud to announce that we're renewing and expanding our support for maintainers of open source projects used across Astral and Codex toolchains at OpenAI. Today, that starts with committing more than $160,000 in direct sponsorship through GitHub
Wow.
sponsors.
Nice.
So there's the Astral Open Source Fund and so on, and it shows you how to apply. So if you want to get also the Codex for open source, $1 million fund that includes 6 months of ChatGPT Pro API credits and so on and so on.
Which have you noticed in Codex, if you're using ChatGPT and Codex, it now gives you an option to reset your quota twice. Like you get two resets
Mm,
of, oh, I messed up and I went over. The,
okay,
the
interesting.
keep an eye on tokenomics. I think this is going to be the next 2 months are going to be very interesting in the token space.
I agree.
Mm-hmm.
In things like, not necessarily endorsement, but things like
Yeah.
Ponytail
Yeah.
in memories and other stuff
Yes.
that keep it more focused are going to become more and more important, I imagine.
Yep. Yep.
All
100%.
right. What am
What
I
else we
talking
got?
about? Oh, yes, I know what I'm talking about here. If I go to any of these courses on Talk Python, what is really cool is I can now, I guess I got to log in to show you, which I'm not and I won't bother, but now every single course at Talk Python training, all 283.9 hours of them have Spanish subtitles,
Oh,
German subtitles, which those have been there for a little while. But the announcement is now Portuguese. Every course has full, high quality Portuguese transcripts, and boy, oh boy, was that a lot of work to generate those correctly.
so who QAs those? Do you have some folks in the community who are QAing these translations?
No, I have a whole series of AI agents and Python software that like reevaluates
Yeah.
them, and it's just a whole back and forth. I was able to QA them somewhat in German because I can speak some German, but my technical German is not great. So
Yeah.
somewhat, but it worked well for there, and so I'm just trying to apply the same process. We'll see. People let me
Yeah.
know how they're turning out, but I think they're pretty good.
Well, I'm glad you're making the effort to make it accessible.
Yeah, exactly. I'm thinking, look, even if they're not perfect, you know what? The English subtitles aren't perfect either. They were done mostly by humans directly, but non-technical humans, so they still need a little
Yeah.
bit of fixes here and there. That's the challenge, right? Like, even if you get a human being to do it, then you got to find a human being who both is patient, diligent,
Mm-hmm.
and does Python, which is like really, and wants to do transcripts. This is a very rare person, I'll tell you what. Okay.
Yep.
A couple more quick announcements. This one, we've got the Django Developer Survey is out, but announcing the search for a DSF executive director. So,
Yeah.
hosted by our friend Jeff Triplett out there. So, they're looking to hire somebody for this, and I believe you deserve a bit of a shout out here.
Hey, look at that.
Shout out to 6 Feet Up, who is one of the key sponsors making this happen. Do you want to say one quick word about that? You know more than I do.
Yeah. No, I think we're definitely very involved in wanting to be engaged in getting the Django Software Foundation and executive director. It's going to be a big move for that group to have that kind of dedicated leadership. Right now, it's very all volunteer run. So things like the conferences are done through another volunteer group called DEFNA, and the Software Foundation, manages some pieces of it. There are some paid positions like the fellows who work on the code, but this is working on growing the community, and there's a huge tail of people using Django out there in the world, and they don't know how to give back. And I think that's part of this executive director's mission is going to be how do they go and find the folks who are getting a lot of value out of Django and making sure that that value kind of gets put back into the community in the form of sponsorships for the software project itself. So we can have more fellows, we can have bigger sponsors at the conferences. People can get greater adoption of Django into more places.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of behind the firewall usage here that this is going to help bring to light and get more sponsorships. So yeah, 6FIP super
What
excited to sponsor and help find the right person.
that's awesome, Calvin. One of the, I think, key secret sauces of Django is the community. So this is right in that space. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So
Especially now in this
yeah,
agentic world, right?
human contact is even more important than ever.
I agree, 100%. All right, I've got
All
a
right,
joke.
so
I've
you
got
got
a
a joke
joke.
for us? You got a
It's
joke?
called oh babe, oh babe, oh. This is rough, but it's right on point for what we've been talking about. Some of the things
All right,
and what's
hit me with it.
okay.
Hit me
You
with
you
it.
talked about tokenomics. No, we don't need to see this. All right. So this is a screenshot of a iMessage. It says, "Babe, heart, heart. $15,000 out of our checking account. Oh my god. Oh, is this what I think it is? Ring emoji, ring emoji, ring emoji. Pans over. Anthropic PVC invoice from Anthropic $15,000.
Keep an eye on that token bill. It's gonna. I
Oh,
don't think it's
babe,
gonna go down.
I'm so sorry, but it's not a ring. It's just a monthly Claude bill. How rough is that?
It's very real.
Yes.
I feel seen. All right, Michael. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Python Bytes. We will be back next week with more Python news and headlines right to your earbuds. So we'll see you
Awesome.
all later.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Calvin.